Today's episode is brought to you by the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast featuring garden history and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is February 8th. Today in 1809, Thomas Jefferson wrote to his friend and favorite nurseryman, Bernard McMahon. At the time, Jefferson was counting the days until he retired from the White House. From Jefferson's letters, it's clear that he was looking forward to spending more time in his garden. The previous July, Jefferson had wrote McMahon and confided, "Early in the next year, I shall ask for some cuttings of your gooseberries, and I'll also send a pretty copious list for the best kinds of garden seeds and flowers. I shall be home early in March and plan to very much devote myself to my garden. I have the tulips you sent me in great perfection, also the hyacinths, tuberoses, amaryllis, and artichokes." And so when Jefferson wrote to McMahon on this day, a month before leaving office, he was following up with his list of plants that he wanted at Monticello. As you might imagine, Jefferson's letter reads the same as any written by an avid gardener in pursuit of new stock. Here's what he wrote. "Sir, I have been daily expecting some of the large hickory nuts from Roanoke, but they have not yet arrived. I must now ask a favor of you to furnish me with the items mentioned below for the garden, which will occupy much of my attention at home. If you will be so good as to send them by stage, which leaves Philadelphia on the 1st of March, they will come in time for me to carry on to Monticello. I salute you with esteem, Thomas Jefferson." And here are the items that made his list. It's actually kind of a small list. I'm a little surprised by that. But here's what he was looking for. He wanted 2 different types of strawberries, the chili strawberry and the Hudson strawberry. He mentions the gooseberry plants. He writes, "Some of the fine gooseberry plants of which you sent me the fruit last year." So he was following up on that. Then he writes that he would like some roots of crown imperials. And of course, here he's talking about Fritillaria imperialis, the dazzling and unique member of the lily family. Beautiful plant. He's looking for lily of the valley. That might surprise some of you who know lily of the valley as an invasive flower. He wanted Auricula, sea kale, and then finally, 1 gallon of a specific type of pea. He writes here he was looking for Leadman's dwarf peas. And then he tells McMahon that they were mentioned in his book on page 310. And then John Galvin was born on this day as well in 1823. He was an English-American born in Kent, and he mastered his grandfather's nursery business in Ireland before immigrating to America with his mom at age 18. After working for several nurseries in New England, including the property owned by Thomas Motley, which eventually would become the Arnold Arboretum at Harvard, John went on to beautify the city of Boston when he became the city forester. John's greatest legacy was transforming old circus grounds and a playground into the Boston Public Garden. After the Massachusetts Public Garden Act was passed in 1856, George Meacham was hired to design the park. But it was John Galvin and his crew who installed the trees, shrubs, flowers, and turf. Outside of his work for the city, John opened the very first retail florist shop in Boston, making life much easier for him and his customers. Before John's flower shop, Bostonians had to order their roses and other cut flowers by mail. What they would do is they would put their orders in these little post boxes that John had placed in various stores around the city. And then he would have to go and collect them all. It was a cumbersome process. And so John's florist shop was a welcome addition to the city. John named his business John Galvin and Company, and the work became a family affair as John's wife and their 7 children helped the business prosper. Over time, the middle child, a son named Thomas, took over the business, and he became a successful gardener, landscape designer, and florist in his own right. John was a beloved member of many Boston social and charitable groups. He embraced his Irish heritage and loved dancing jigs and reels. One obituary noted that his favorite Irish song was Malony Don't Know That McCarthy Is Dead, sung to the tune of the Irish Washerwoman. 2 years before he died, at the age of 76, the April 6, 1899 edition of the New England Florist shared a little story about John. They wrote, "The veteran florist John Galvin, the father of Thomas Galvin, had his pocket picked on the street the other day, March 31st, we believe. But he knew nothing about it until told by a friend, who John suspected of trying to spring an April Fool's on him. That is, until he found his pocketbook with $70 in cash missing. But in a stroke of good fortune, the thief, while being chased by the police, dropped the pocketbook. John's ownership was ascertained after finding his name marked inside. The moral is to get $70 in your pocketbook, and then be sure your name is on it." And it was on this day in 1944 that Del Monte ran an ad supporting the quality of their canned and jarred fruit over homegrown. Despite prior marketing in support of Victory Gardens, on this day, Del Monte floated a pitch to consumers during World War II that featured a woman holding a can of peaches, saying, "I learned the hard way all right. And believe me, since I put up fruit of my own, I appreciate Del Monte quality more than ever." It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Treasures of the Mexican Table by Pati Jinich. This book came out in 2021, and the subtitle is Classic Recipes, Local Secrets. This is Pati's 3rd cookbook. It follows 2 previous cookbooks that were very well received, Pati's Mexican Table, The Secrets of Real Mexican Home Cooking, and Mexican Today, New and Rediscovered Recipes for the Contemporary Kitchen. Born and raised in Mexico City, Pati Jinich hosts her PBS television series, Pati's Mexican Table, which is going on its 10th season and has won numerous awards, including James Beard Awards and Emmys. In her latest cookbook, Treasures of the Mexican Table, Pati is sharing heirloom recipes that have been held onto in families for generations. These recipes utilize vegetables like peppers, onion, garlic, and countless herbs straight from the garden. If Chipotle success indicates the popularity of Mexican food, then Pati's treasures will be sure to please, taking center stage on your outdoor dining tables this summer. Pati's cookbook is a hefty work, 416 pages, and weighing in at almost 3 pounds. Inside, you'll find history and tradition, as well as cherished family recipes that cover every category of cooking, from soups and tacos, quesadillas and burritos, tamales and salsas, pickles, guacamole, beans, rice, and pasta, just to name a few. There are many, many other categories of recipes, and they're all delicious. You can get a copy of Pati Jinich, Treasures from the Mexican Table by Pati Jinich, and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $23. Finally, we end the show today with a little Botanic Spark featuring John Ruskin, who was born on this day back in 1819. He was a Victorian-era English art critic, watercolorist, and philanthropist. And if you haven't seen the movie Effie yet, it's on Netflix, you can do that. It paints a rather unattractive portrait of John Ruskin as a husband, but in terms of his nature writing, he was very inspiring. He once wrote, "Nature is painting for us, day after day, pictures of infinite beauty." John also recognized that beauty and utility don't always go hand in hand. He once observed, "Remember that the most beautiful things in the world are the most useless." Peacocks and lilies, for instance. John named his home and garden Brantwood. The name Brantwood is Norse. Brant means steep, and his home was situated on a wooded high point overlooking a lake. Today, Brantwood is administered by a charitable trust. As with most gardens from time to time, John's own garden experienced times of neglect. By the end of the summer in 1879, John wrote, "Looking over my kitchen garden yesterday, I found it a miserable mass of weeds gone to seed. The roses in the higher garden putrefied into brown sponges, feeling like dead snails, and the half-ripe strawberries all rotten at the stalks." As for his legacy, there's one famous garden saying from John Ruskin that's remained popular through the years, and you can see it inscribed on all kinds of garden elements still today. He wrote, "Kind hearts are the garden, kind thoughts are the roots, kind words are the blossoms, kind deeds are the fruit." That's it for today's show. Just a reminder that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and request to join. And if you'd like more of the Daily Gardener, you can subscribe to the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. That's where you can also show your support for the show by donating to thedailygardener.org. This is Jennifer Ebling. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.